I'm Fox 26 meteorologist John Dawson. This is the tropical update that we've got focused just for YouTube. Glad you found us on this social media. We're here every day of hurricane season. So the weekends, the slow days, the busy days, every day of hurricane season. I hope you have already subscribed to the channel and you get back here every day to check in with us. After about 4 p.m. Central Time, that's when we make our posts. Let's talk about the current situation in the Atlantic. And it's an interesting situation in the fact that Tammy, which we've been following for a long time, was a tropical storm, was a hurricane, was a post-tropical, and I guess that's technically what we're going to call it right now, is a post-cyclone is what we'll look at. Post-tropical cyclone, Tammy, I think is what we're going to officially call it. It's out here kind of near Bermuda, and it is something that is, again, not tropical as far as the definition, or it doesn't meet the definition and the characteristic that it currently has. But it's just going to wander around out here in the Atlantic, not really doing a whole lot, and maybe even getting those characteristics that it needs to meet that definition of tropical. So that's the case that the Hurricane Center is identifying it as an area of interest right now. So normally we'll have an invest, or normally we would have these yellow shaded areas where we see a tropical wave and it might sort of develop. We actually have a name that we can put onto that, as a matter of fact. This again is post-tropical cyclone Tammy, and the National Hurricane Center says over the next 7 days, there's a 30% chance that it could redevelop into itself until another tropical system. And again, remember how it works is it always keeps the same name. Once it's a tropical system, it'll hang on to that name. So this would be Tammy again, should it reform and become a tropical system, as long as those remnants are somewhat clearly defined. And really, the folks in Bermuda are the only ones that need to worry about that in the next 7 days or so. I'm going to show you our European model only the next 5 days. I'm not going to show you the whole 7 days. I'm only going to show you about 5 days worth. And you can see there's clearly a low pressure. There's clearly circulation, and it brings some rain to Bermuda, and then it wanders back out to the east a little bit, and then, okay, let's wander around to the south, and now we're going to head back to the west again, it looks like. This literally is spinning in a circle out here and could have those tropical characteristics once again. So you can kind of see here in the last 48 hours how we had Tammy again as a cyclone, and then continuing to move up, and it's going to swirl around a little bit, kind of connected to a frontal boundary that's out there a little bit. So for the folks in Bermuda, certainly something worth watching, but for the rest of us, maybe not quite so much. I want to sort of back up a little bit and talk about Otis somewhat, because Otis is something that just appeared so quickly out of nowhere, and I don't want to say out of nowhere, that was certainly being tracked, but the intensity of it was something that flared up more than the expectations. And it's taking us a full day or so to really get a grasp on what Otis did, and it's not pretty for sure on that west coast of Mexico near Acapulco. It is really devastating, some of the reports and the scenes that are coming out there and the damage that has happened. And this is about 48 hours worth of imagery where you can see that rapid intensification and it making its landfall early on Wednesday morning. So I've got my imagery set here right before it makes its landfall. This is Tuesday evening, again, right before midnight. And you can see that such a well-defined system of a Category 5 hurricane. And at landfall, there was recorded 165-mile-an-hour winds as it made its landfall there. And as I mentioned, it increased its strength in a 24-hour period that was just not something that's normally seen. So many people caught off guard, going to bed one night and then waking up and having that just hurricane hammering the coast. The moisture in the Pacific, you remember Hurricane Norma, how it tracked all that moisture over to parts of Texas and up in Oklahoma? Same thing is still, that pattern's in place. And so now what was Otis is still pushing moisture up. And yes, there's Gulf moisture getting sucked into this as well. But Pacific moisture, Gulf moisture, continuing to provide a lot of rain for parts of the state of Texas and into other portions of the United States as well. I'm just going to show you some rain expectations from now moving forward for 5 days. Look how much rain is headed towards Arkansas. There's definitely going to be some flooding situations at some point over here into this part of our country with all of the rain. And then while parts of the state of Texas really receiving some beneficial rains. There's some parts that got way too much already, but also receiving, again, some of that beneficial rain. So just kind of to reflect on Otis for just a minute, again, the landfall had 165 mile an hour winds, 923 on the millibars of pressure. It happened at 1 o'clock in the morning, and so just so many people not prepared with that intensification that took place. It's the strongest hurricane to ever make landfall on the eastern Pacific, so on the west coast of Mexico. It's the strongest one on record that we know of, and it's the first time a Cat 5 has ever made landfall on that eastern Pacific. And the winds, it increased 115 miles per hour in a 24-hour period. And I think it was a 12-hour period. I think this is right. A 12-hour period, it went from from 60 mile an hour winds up to 145 mile an hour winds. It was an 80 mile an hour increase in a 12-hour period that we saw that. So again, this is just crazy how much of an increase that we saw in some of that, and how Otis, again, intensified just incredibly over that period. All right, as I mentioned, we're here every day of hurricane season, keeping you updated on this platform. If you want to find me and make a connection, that would be fantastic. Instagram is how I'm most interactive, but you're welcome to check anything else out. It's at John Dawson, Fox 26. Again, I'd love it if you give me a follow on Instagram, and I'd kind of get to see a little bit of what's happening in your life as well. So that'll do it for today's wrap up. Make sure you're back here tomorrow. We'll bring you another update about this same time.